So it's been a couple of months and a couple of thousand miles since I got my van back after the engine went boop. So if you don't know the story, I was trundling along around about sort of 20 miles an hour and the engine just stopped dead. Turns out that there was a camshaft failure. So my engine has been rebuilt because of all the gubbins that fell through the engine after part of the camshaft sprocket or cog or whatever shattered and went through the engine. Its engine's had a rebuild. Like I say, I've had it back for about 2 months now, and I've discovered what caused the engine to go poof. So the engine in my Peugeot Boxer 2018, late model 2018-2019, it's a 2-litre blue HDI. So it's got 130 brake horsepower. It's a twin cam engine, obviously diesel turbocharged, with the AdBlue system, all that kind of stuff on there. And at the time it went pop, it had done 117,000 and something miles. It had been well maintained by me and the previous owner, white delivery van driver, at least in the service book anyway. Around about sort of 18 months before it went pop, there was a cam belt change by me, and full service was done literally sort of every 10,000 miles. You would think theoretically then, everything's all right, everything it needed, it got. So if it needed new brakes, it got. I've upgraded the suspension, done all that kind of stuff. It's been looked after. So why would the engine just, die like that? Well, to kind of like go back maybe a couple of weeks before it went pop, I'd been travelling through sort of like the Pyrenees, sort of out of northern Spain, across the Pyrenees, France, and we were making our way over to the Netherlands. And there was a few days where we were climbing up sort of like, as you do on the motorways, up through the mountains and everything else like that. And I'd be needing to drop it down to 4th gear just to keep going. Now, Mandy, fair enough, in her little van, was at some point pushing me up hills. I do remember on a couple of occasions that she was so close that she had to put her brakes on going up a hill because my van had slowed down so much. So in that sense, I'm slowing down by changing down gear. I'm then increasing my revs, so I'm revving the engine harder to pull me up these hills at some point, even struggling to go past trucks and everything like that. And then also, to go back quite some time back ago, there was a very, very, very annoying buzzing sort of rattling noise that came from underneath this sort of airbox intake, which was the fuel pipes. So from over this side where the fuel filter is to this side, which is where the fuel pump is, on the end of the exhaust camshaft, I believe. All the fuel pipes go across the bulkhead and they were vibrating a little bit, and there's this god-awful buzz noise in the background. So those are the two kind of things that are going to be more relative as this story progresses. So like I say, it is a twin cam engine. You've got a cam belt at the side there, which drives one of the cams, and then an internal chain here, which drives the other cam. One of the cams then drives the fuel pump on the back there, and what had happened on mine was this chain that interconnected the inlet and the outlet cam, or exhaust cam. The chain had basically become loose, and then at some point had become so loose that it had slipped maybe, and that's what shattered the sprocket or the cog on the end. So what we're trying to understand is why that happened. Everyone asked me the same question: why was it happening? Obviously it went pop. I then got myself recovered back to the UK, cost £1,400, and I did that personally so that I could get the van back. It's my home, and I didn't want to be without it. The RAC said it could be 6 to 8 weeks to get it repatriated, so I paid for that so I could get it back and get it repaired as fast as I possibly could, because again, it's my home. So anywhere I've got to pay for to be out of that is, an extra cost. While we're on that subject, I do want to point out that the RAC did actually repay me the full recovery fee of £1,400 as well. So that was a win situation too. So anyway, yeah, got the van back to the UK, and I took it to the garage that I trusted to do all the other work, and that had obviously done the cam belt change. Obviously they pulled it apart and found out, yes indeed, the exhaust cam had actually shattered. So the sprocket or the cog or whatever on the end of it had shattered. Now that kind of makes sense in terms of, well, if that stops moving, that drives the fuel pump. So therefore, as soon as that exhaust cam stopped moving, the fuel pump stopped and the engine stopped. So potentially wherever the cam stopped, the exhaust cam stopped, the valves were open and they were either spewing stuff back into the inlet system, or the engine was spewing stuff out of, you know, the cylinders. There was unburnt fuel or whatever else. So the idea was to go through the engine and check everything out. And like I say, we found all sorts of, from big chunks of metal to microscopic chunks of metal all the way through the engine, which is why it went for a full engine rebuild. And also after they changed the, the engine and all the other bits in there, we had, I think it was 4 oil changes as well, just to make sure everything was totally cleared out the system. And indeed, when they handed it back to me, they said, go away, drive it for around about 500 miles or so, and then bring it back and we will do a final oil change and just check everything. Make sure there's no coolant leaks, no oil leaks, fuel leaks or anything, because they've obviously had injectors out, fuel pump, everything's been a part in it. So cool, no problem. After about the 3rd day of driving it around, bearing in mind I'd left from the garage up near Hull to go down to where Mandy was in Tewkesbury, and there was a few average hills on the M1. It struggled to get up those hills, much the same as it did before the engine went. And I'm like, oh shit, this isn't good. So the engine's now working, but I can't climb hills, which was in the back of my mind, like, oh my god, it's going to fail again. So I called the garage and I said, whilst the engine's working fine, there's this issue where I can't climb hills. So essentially, over about 50 miles an hour, the engine's gutless. To which they turned around and said, oh, don't worry, we've reduced the power within the ECU settings. We've done a little remap in there to reduce the power output so that, essentially it's a bit easier for the engine as you're wearing it in. So, that's all well and good. Wish they'd told me beforehand, but yeah, within probably about 2 weeks I'd done the 500 miles. I was coping with the lack of sort of power going up hills, but it was still drivable. The van was driving, everything was okay, it was just this lack of power. So I arranged to go back to the garage and have them do the final oil change, but unfortunately still had no power going up hills. I think you forgot to do the remap thing, to put it back to my settings and not the one you've loaded. To which they replied, oh yeah, we checked with the guy, he actually didn't do it. So we don't know why you're lacking on power. The unfortunate thing is I was due then to go back to see Mandy. The garage got other jobs on. So I said, right, okay, can I come back in a week? And then we'll go through whatever we need to go through to understand why the van still has no power going up hills. And from this point, it got a little bit interesting. It's a difficult one to sort of to diagnose, I guess, because you've got a working engine that pulls okay up to 50 miles an hour. Why isn't it producing any power after that? And why can't it climb up hills? And I was doing my own sort of like Googling and research. I've got a code reader, I'd plug it in the van. There'd be no code showing up. So there was nothing really to indicate why the van suddenly, after it sort of like being fine, dying, new engine rebuild, still lacking of power. So I was thinking, right, what can we do? I know the garage are really good and I know they're going to help me out, but I like to do as much as I can. So I've done like a new fuel filter, make sure it wasn't that one. I've been checking out for sort of like vacuum pipe leaks or turbo pipe leaks or anything else. And the only thing I found was one of the intercooler pipes looked like it had been a bit bodged by whoever, and there was a bracket on there that had snapped off. So the plastic welded where the bracket was, put it back on, and loads of sort of like duct tape or something around it. So it looked a bit dodgy. So another 200 quid got me all the pipes and everything else on there, vacuum pipes and intercooler pipes, all replaced. So that was done as well. Still lacking on power though, unfortunately. So yeah, let's go back to the garage. So this is where it got really, really, really interesting. Under there are the twin camshafts. Obviously we know one of them was completely ruined, the engine blew, and yeah, when they'd ordered the rebuild parts to the engine, they'd given the engine serial number and just accepted the parts that came in. The unfortunate thing is the two camshafts that have been sent are one of around about 12 different options for this engine, and unfortunately were not identical in part number or lobe profile. So I had another top end engine rebuild where they replaced the cams, put the engine back together, and then said, right, that's it now, we're all happy, everything should be working perfectly now, go out for a test drive. So I went out for a test drive and there was loads more low end power. I had a big smile on my face. It's like, yes, finally, my van's back and it feels better than ever. I mean, I remember when I drove this van, when I first got it as an empty panel van, and obviously the previous van I drove was a big motorhome. Fair enough, it had like the same engine that Mandy's got, which I think is the better engine of these vans, which is the Fiat 2.3 turbo diesel engine, which is actually an Iveco engine, and it is the best engine. So yeah, this is a side note. If you are going to buy one of these vans from Stellantis, don't buy anything other than the 2.3 Fiat, because yeah, that is a far superior engine. I would probably even argue to say that even though they all come out of the same factory, the Fiat seems like its build quality is a few notches above Citroen and Peugeot and all the others as well. But anyway, that's my view, that's an aside. The van is back, it's got more power, it's got these new cams in, so another top end rebuild, and I'm off on my merry way. Woohoo! Get to the first hill on the motorway, no power. Literally it's the same, 50 miles an hour, just feels like someone's going, see you mate, you've got no power, like someone's dragging the van from behind or pushing it back from the front. No power at all. So gets back to the garage and I said, yeah, one step forward, but it's still 2 steps back, folks. And then they said, right, okay then. They ran some live diagnostics as we were driving it, and they said it looks like the system's not being able to make the right pressure, specifically fuel pressure. So I said, right, okay then, whilst I don't understand this, let me just say that the fuel pump has always been a rattly, buzzy, annoying thing. And the guy went, why didn't you ever tell me that in the past? So I came back, put a new fuel pump on, went back out again, even more power, still didn't climb hills. And by now I was sitting there and I was saying to him, I'm not being funny, but I am not made of money. I can't keep throwing money after money and then spending days and days and days at the garage and driving around the country and driving back up here to play part swap diagnostics. I need an actual fix. So he said, right, okay, we haven't got time to order parts or anything now, blah, blah, blah. He says, right, I've got a fix for you. We're going to try it out. We're going to see what it is, and let's go from there. He says, just go out on your bike for half an hour or something like that, and then come back, and hopefully we'll have it sorted out. It's like, okay, odd, but I get the feeling that I have, maybe agitated them slightly by what I've said, or they're as annoyed, pissed off, whatever, as me, with this thing not being, fixed, shall we say. So I went out, did about 30 miles, was out for about 3 hours, and on the way back they went past me in the van. It's like beep beep beep, wave, and they were like, yeah, thumbs out the window and everything. Like, oh yes. So I got back there and I said, are we good? And he went, yes, we are good to go, bosh, off you go. So right, okay then. So I packed the bike in the van, went off, did the first hill I could find. Still no power. But there was something slightly, quite significantly different. First of all, there were flat spots and dead spots on acceleration, and then there was also a few little points on acceleration, annoyingly, like driving around town 30 miles an hour kind of speed, where the engine would chug and it'd go chug, 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 chug. Like I don't know, like the signal from the accelerator was half engaging the fuel pump, or the injectors or something like that. And not only that, but there was loads of black smoke coming out the exhaust as well. So I went back and I said, this isn't working. What did you do? And that's when they said that they'd actually taken out part of the exhaust called the DPF, which is under there somewhere. And they've basically bored out the centre of the DPF. So yeah, at some point in the near future, we need to get you a new DPF filter. But for now, we've gone into the ECU and we've basically sort of like, told the ECU don't to do the DPF burn cycle sort of thing. And that's fine. So at this stage, I'm thinking, right, so now I've not got a DPF. My van smokes black smoke. And I've still not got the same power back. I've not got that oomph that you get low speed once you get over 50. So there's something wrong. But I decided not to go back to the garage. My mind as an engineer was deciding paths that I wanted to take, given the fact that I was convinced mechanically the van was fine. I knew before the engine went boop, there was an issue getting up hills, right? I knew that the van, when you take off first, second, third gear sort of thing, loads of power there, not an issue. So mechanically, the van, the engine is okay. The gearbox is all right. Everything is doing what it's supposed to do. But for whatever reason, when you get over 50 miles an hour, or when you're applying more sort of acceleration requirements, more power requirements at speed going up hills, that's when it's running into these issues. So I was convinced then that we're looking at something like EGR or turbo. But then there was also the fact that they'd obviously been tinkering with the map and, the ECU, and they'd put some map on there. And now I had this sort of like chug, 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 jerking like a steam engine, flat spots on acceleration. So I decided I was going to take it to Phil at the remap guy that did the the AdBlue delete and the original sort of like remap to do the economy kind of remap. And I said to him, have you got my original ECU map? Because he takes a backup of everything he does. He's quite a clever chap, which unfortunately the garage never did. And he said, yes, I've got it. So I said, right, okay, I want to come to you and I want to do a complete sort of wipe of the ECU maps. So I go back to the original one that was on my van before I even had anything done. The AdBlue system is still there, so if it needs more AdBlue, I'll chuck that in. We'll change the DPF filter. So that was done. And then the night before I went to see him, I decided I was going to try something else as well. So I knew that the MAF sensor, the mass airflow sensor, was fine. I'd taken it out and cleaned it, and I'd also put another one in when I changed the fuel filter. So I knew that was all right, wasn't a problem. The only kind of question in the back of my head was EGR turbo. Has something in there gone a bit daft? Has all the crap that was thrown around the engine, when it went pop, or the times that I was trying it after that to try and start it, and the engine was turning over and possibly throwing more crap down the exhaust because the exhaust valves are open. There are many questions in there of what might have happened to the exhaust system. So if the DPF was blocked, yeah, that might answer why, I was struggling beforehand. That might have explained what was going on. But I wanted to kind of like get a reset on everything, start from scratch again and tackle this, in my mind, methodically, with what I knew from driving it and the experience I had from beforehand it was even built. So as an empty van to being fully built, to the days before the engine went and what it felt like now. But before we get to this crucial bit, I need to tell you about my new YouTube channel. The concept of driving around trying to fix the van and not being able to go anywhere, not being able to travel, and just feeling really sort of like down in the dumps and angry and frustrated about all this meant that I've obviously, as you've seen, I've not been chucking out the same sort of content, and there's been no travel. And as you know, I was getting a bit sort of like a bit confused about the idea of, you know, how to make good travel videos in a way that I was happy with it. But I like YouTube. I like making these videos. So I came up with this idea. I need a new YouTube channel that is completely independent from travel or gadgets or anything else like that. And then I remember that in a few videos, I've included what I eat, the very basic food that I'm able to make, but I like. And I thought, you know what? There must be loads of people out there that are just like me, that really struggle to put decent meals together, you know, struggle to just understand how a certain meat is cooked, whether it's going to make you poorly or not, and what things go together. And also, you know, like just to take the faff out of cooking so that you can just make something, it's quick and easy, few ingredients, and then when you're done, you know, there's less faff to clear up and stuff like that. So I came up with the idea of camper scrans. That's my new channel. And if you want to know more about it, there'll be a link down below when you can go and check that out, and a link in the video description. But I just wanted to put that in there now because, you know, like shameless plugs and everything like that. So yeah, what have we learned about the van since I've been in control of understanding what perhaps could be causing these problems? So the first thing I learned is, yes, the engine is fine. Totally happy with that. The new camshafts, or the correct camshafts, should I say, are performing better. So it's got to be something else. And I went electronic wise because that is my kind of background. And I was knowing what had been done by the other garage and the changes that I'd felt while driving it, I totally felt that at least 50% of what was wrong with this power loss was down to electronics. Now, the other side of what I was feeling was wrong is the EGR. So the EGR basically allows exhaust gas to recirculate. So it warms up the engine faster, and it also tries to reburn the exhaust gases to make sure that whatever's coming out of the exhaust, you know, isn't unburnt fuel or obnoxious fumes or whatever else. So if that wasn't working, if it was stuck in an open state or a closed state, that might be affecting it. And then the other thing is the turbo. So yeah, so the turbo's way down the back there. So if the wastegate on the turbo, or the dump valve, or whatever you want to call it, or the vanes on the turbo, or the shafts on the turbo, anything like that's going on, that might also be causing this issue too. So I bought some treatment that you put in the fuel and also spray down into the intake system. So basically on mine, I just took the air filter out and sprayed it in little bursts and things like that. And then I put the fuel system treatment in there as well. And I went out for about 3.5 hour drive. So in my kind of terms, the expression I use is I drove it like I stole it. However, there is something else which my brother told me about, and he sent me a text and says, you need an Italian tune-up. So I said, Italian tune-up? And he said, Google it, smiley face. So yeah, so between him and I, we both had the same idea. And it's a weird one because we basically buy these vans and we assume they're knackered because white van delivery driver or whatever has been driving it, and he's been driving it hard, you know. He's like, when I get to my next job, revs, up your arse, flashing, get out of the way kind of thing down the motorway. We get them and we're like, we need fuel economy. We drive it like Miss Daisy. Yes, I'm getting maximum fuel economy. It's so quiet, driving like Miss Daisy. The truth is, White Van Man had the best idea of way to drive these vehicles. We're probably ruining them. And that's what I discovered. So I bought this fuel treatment, the Wins fuel treatment, which is EGR turbo cleaner, shoved it in the tank. It was about 3/4 of a tank, so I shoved the whole bottle in and did this 3.5 hour drive. And I just did a loop around where I was, just going around sort of like the M18, M1, M62, M1, kind of like doing this loop. And there's some great hills on the motorways as well. And then I did some back roads to interconnect everything. And I would alternate sort of half an hour of hard driving and then half an hour of easy driving to let everything sort of like cool down and that. And after 2 hours, I then did the loop that I did when I first left the garage the night before. and I recorded it. You can see the speed on there, because the speed that I joined it was like 45, 50 miles an hour. So if I'm coming onto the slip road now, they were doing 50 miles an hour. I'll put it back on cruise at 61 miles an hour. And let's see if it has enough power, not only to accelerate to 61, but actually climb over the hill as well. Now I can already feel that the turbo's there, it's kicking in. As you can see, the speed is climbing. Like say 24 hours ago. I mean, that's not ideal. Well, it is climbing slowly. But yeah, 24 hours ago I was in 4th gear revving the tits off this engine right now. Reaching probably about 56 miles an hour at the most in 4th gear. So I'm in 6th gear right now. And yeah, there's a van just about to pass me who struggled as well. He was keeping the same speed as me. So he's now shooting past me. So I'm gonna call that good. I nearly said fixed. I don't want to use that word. I'm going to call that better. I sent it to my brother and sent it to some friends as well that were, you know, catching along with the saga. And I went up over the hill, no problem. So it still had the flat spots on acceleration and the chuggy little bits, sort of stuff like that. But it appears that the ability to accelerate up hills over 50 miles an hour was beginning to ease. So I did another lap, and then I got around the M62, climbing up over Leeds Way and stuff like that, and then down the M1 through Sheffield. There's some, you know, real sort of like steep hills of Barnsley and all that kind of stuff. It was pulling fine up the hills there. You could even accelerate pulling up the hills, which has not been able to do for probably a year now that well. No, obviously, just no words to say that, yeah, potentially my engine blew up because the DPF was blocked, something in the turbo or the EGR wasn't working correctly, not allowing the right pressure through or whatever, and therefore I was excessively over revving the engine, and the chain basically gave up. It became stretched with all the revving I was doing, became noisy, would have been chattering. And why didn't I hear that? I did hear it. I thought it was the stupid fuel pipes, and I spent 3 or 4 days every time we stopped trying to find which fuel pipe was making this annoying buzzing chattering noise again, because, you know, when I got the van, that was the annoying buzzing noise, was the fuel pipes. It wasn't the fuel pipes on this occasion. It was the bloody cam chain chattering away, warning me that it was about to fail. So yes, could I have avoided the complete engine failure? Yes. 2 easy fixes. Don't drive it like Miss Daisy. Now and again put some fuel treatment in there, spray some EGR cleaner in there, turbo cleaner, like you say, drive it hard, rev it hard for, you know, sort of like half an hour once a month, get everything cleared out of that system so that for whatever reason, you know, that's not all sort of coked up. The build-up of all the sort of crap inside there obviously affected it in some way. And then, yeah, since putting the new fuel pump on, there's no vibration, so I will know in future now if a vibration does return, then I'm going to check that chain, the cam chain, out first. So yeah, an expensive lesson, which in total for the rebuild and all the parts and everything else, it's probably now set me back about £4,000, and has taken, like I say, about sort of 2,000 miles and about 2 months to diagnose and go through everything. The next day after this, I obviously went in, saw Phil at the tuning place. He basically put my original basic, sort of from factory ECU remap back on, did all the updates, and then took the AdBlue system off again, And since I know now what these things are, I actually have gone back and asked him to add the fuel economy remap as well, which, yeah, does up the power a little bit. But now I know what causes it. I know what to look out for, which is me making this video to let you know that you've got to look out for these things and how to fix them. And it isn't the tyres and it isn't the remap. It's actually because we're all driving like Miss Daisy. So yeah, there's the thing. It's free. It'll stop you from knackering your engine up, and you might have a bit of fun as well. But yeah, rev that engine, folks. Rev that, and I'm talking like until it goes rev the engine. You know, make sure it's perfectly okay first. I suppose I should put a caveat in there first. Make sure that you've not got a rattly cam chain in there, otherwise you will be in the same situation as me. But yeah, rev the engine, get all the crap, the carbon buildup and everything out of the system, put some treatment in there that cleans out the turbo and the EGR, and happy days. So yeah, that is my engine story. I now am extremely happy. It's fixed. It is far better than it has ever been, including as smooth and lovely as it was when it was an empty panel van, because that fuel pump, the new fuel pump, is far quieter, and you can tell even inside the van. So I've got more power. I'm getting around about 6 to 9 mpg more, depending if it's a round town kind of country lane run or on the motorway. So yeah, less fuel being used, so happy days on that one too. And yeah, the engine is ready now for another 100,000 miles or whatever else. Happy motoring. And as far as the van's concerned, the rest of it, I'm happy with my van. Like I say, I've fixed the issues I've had with it, like the rear wing on the other side that let the water in. Well, that's sorted out. Everything else in my van works fine. Very happy with the layout. And one of the things from spending 6 weeks in the caravan while this was being sort of repaired, was that like toilet cassettes. No, I definitely prefer separating toilets. I prefer the layout of my van than an open caravan sort of system. This is built for me, by me. It's exactly what I wanted in exactly the right configurations. And yeah, love it. So it's staying around for the foreseeable. And that is the end of this vlog. I hope this has helped you in some way. And yeah, I wouldn't just put down this driving Miss Daisy Larky to this engine, put it down to all engines. So Mandy's taken note of this as well, and that we're going to make sure we get some fuel treatment out for Mandy's van, and she's going to rev it that little bit more when we get going sometimes, so she'll avoid those sort of like carbon buildups and everything else, because ultimately the engines have still got EGRs and turbos that are going to be carbon sort of like clogged by driving like Miss Daisy all the time. So yeah, so one last note, don't forget Camper Scrans, go and subscribe over there if you like food, which like me, I like food. And I shall catch you on the next video. Take care, folks. Bye.